This is the Original Copy Podcast. If you haven't seen our previous episodes, go check them out now. What's going on, Sam?
Not much. It's been a interesting past couple of days.
Again?
Very, very big drops have happened in the world of the internet. We have a lot of the JFK files have been released to the public.
Finally.
I'm under the impression that not all of them are going to be released. I think there's a lot of files that could implicate other governments, our government's strategies the CIA might have, regardless if we want them to be released or not. There's always going to be stuff that they're like, we don't care. We're just not going to tell you. And that can go into everything of including UFOs, like aliens, all that stuff. Like they could just have tech out there and just stuff that we're never going to find out. So I wasn't surprised when I saw the JFK files got released, but some of the stuff they said that they just weren't going to release, which makes me think that there's hard incriminating evidence of either a different country. In this case, a lot of people think Israel is, because Israel is mentioned a lot in the files, stuff that people have been going over. So stuff like that could implicate a relationship with a country. Obviously, the government knows about it and they don't care, but they don't want to sway the people to like think a certain way about some country. So I understand that.
Yeah, I think it goes pretty deep. I'm sure we'll be finding out a lot for a long time here. But yeah, I don't know. It's almost too early to really think anything or, pretend to know anything. I'm just excited to see when people actually digest it and sum it up, and we can actually get, start figuring out some new information on the outside of what's just in the papers.
Yeah. So it's not going to be this episode, but next episode, we're going to do a bigger deep dive into the actual JFK files because there's a lot to go through, and we didn't really want to rush it.
Like 70,000 pages?
I think they only released 50, but I think there's like in total, there's something like that. But I mean, everything from how everything lines up from the Warren Commission to basically why JFK was assassinated or what he was doing during that time. We kind of want to give a full breakdown of what was happening during that time, especially because me and you weren't even alive then.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like, it's like nowadays getting to see Trump, somebody attempt to assassinate him. There's a lot that led up to that, right? And
for sure,
for us, we didn't live through that time, so there's a lot we might not understand. So we won't do a deep dive, but like a brief overview. I saw a lot of stuff. I saw stuff, basically them saying that they have a lot of money now, and then the Jews were their bankers, and now they can go ahead and assassinate him, for lack of a better term. There was one that said like Kennedy hated Biden and he called him a traitor, but I think he wrote him a letter that said that he was a traitor or something like that. So it wasn't just like political stunt, like, hey, like they have right now, like on TV, like, oh, you're a traitor. I think it was like a more enduring of like, he wrote him a letter calling him a traitor or something like that, which is interesting because he was just the president. Right. So it makes you think he was trying to gain power and control for that many years because he was like around then, and now it's all culminated to he was just president. So that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Some other things that I saw was obviously the guy who had proof that the CIA, a faction of the CIA, basically he thought that they were going to assassinate him, JFK, that he was later found dead from suicide. So a lot of people obviously put two and two together. If the CIA is going to go assassinate somebody, then obviously they don't have a problem killing another person who's going to leak the news. I mean, it's so easy nowadays to say suicide. That's why you see a bunch of famous people nowadays say, I'm not suicidal. Like, I'm not going to do that to myself. Because it's all they have to do is write some stupid note that, whatever.
I saw a lot of people are saying now, because there's, a lot of different angles of the actual assassination. A lot of people are saying it's Jackie Onassis was one of the shooters, right? Because we got new information. Well, I had heard about this a while just because of that William Cooper guy that wrote that Behold a Pale Horse book. But, he's talking about JFK and the driver shooting him over his left shoulder.
And there's video.
Or his right shoulder.
Yeah.
There's video of that for a long time, and I sort of believe that to be a possibility. Yeah. But now they're saying not only did that happen, but Jackie Onassis also because you can see her go like up to him right before he gets shot.
Yeah.
That she shot him under the chin with I don't know, some like.
So it's interesting you say that, because some of the files that are being like kept secret and aren't being shown to the public are letters that I believe she wrote to, who's the guy on the Warren Commission, Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson, or whoever took over. There's a bunch of letters that were written to the successor, is that the right word? The successor, sorry, of JFK. I mean, obviously we're going to find out more information, but there's a lot of these things that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like there could have been a lot of people involved. Right. And at the end of the day, the CIA could have gone to somebody like her. I mean, she's part of the top 13 families, right?
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, and it's like at the end of the day, they could have easily said, hey, you're going to do this. And at the end of the day, like, if she's part of the family. Well,
because there's that, then there's also just on a very surface level, you know, there was the very famous Marilyn Monroe affair that JFK had. And, you know, I mean, that's enough motivation for your average housewife, let alone, you know, a first lady of a great family, you know.
And that could have been viewed as huge disrespect, especially because the Kennedy family and the Onassis family are part of the big families. And it's like, if that's the case, then that could have been viewed as, okay, is another reason to participate in it. I don't think that's a reason for the assassination. My biggest thing was because Israel's mentioned a lot, and people think that the reason that, or the biggest reason, was because he was going to take nukes away from Israel. So they basically were like, no, you can't force us to not have nukes. So they could have, I mean, just like Trump is nowadays, like he was shaking things up, and nobody wanted things to be shaken up in their life. So it looks like it was all a giant like team up, and they all just decided to do that.
And that's exactly, you know, those are the parallels of why RFK supports Trump now. You know, it's like we've seen these patterns. We don't get somebody like this that's going to go against the grain for, you know, not very often.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get somebody and there's no support. It's like people will come out, start building a framework around him now because we know they need that. You know, you can't just let somebody, you know, they'll make it so far getting a message out, and then they'll silence them, and then that message dies with them. And, you know, that silence is a more powerful message at the end of the day.
It's also interesting, too, because he was riding in a motorcade with his top down. Like it's stuff like that. It's like, okay, whose decision was that? Obviously, it's different then than it is nowadays. But the reason the president's so protected nowadays is because of stuff like that. But it makes you wonder, like, he was just a sitting duck. And I can't even imagine, like, putting myself in the shoes of that. I can't even imagine, like, everybody you're around, assuming that everyone was in on it, like the driver, Jackie Onassis, like all these people. Imagine just being in on it, and you're just getting in a motorcade just to go say hi to people or whatever, and then you're just dead. Like, that's crazy.
It's most mind-blowing to see, like, people,
no pun intended,
people's sense of security back then. Like, you know, that's just kind of how it was. Like, people just weren't worried about things, but to see that on a presidential level is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, yeah, like Trump's motorcade is insane. It's probably the best motorcade that's ever been. And it's so, you know, the amount of technology is probably, it might even touch $1 billion. I have no idea what the total assets are.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's well thought out.
Because, I mean, especially when they had the fear of, like, the drone strikes, like the personal drones. Like, they were going to, like, in Ukraine, they have a bunch of mini drones flying around with bombs on them. Mm-hmm. They had, like, EMP technology on the top of a motorcade car that was following behind Trump.
Right.
And it was basically, like, crashing any signal that was going to, like, come in. So I thought that was obviously interesting just to see the level of, like, now they're protecting the president.
Well, and, like, there's 2 Air Force Ones. When did that start? You know, did JFK have 2? Probably not.
Did they have? Is there 2? I thought there was like the vice presidents. I didn't know. It's Air Force 2, right?
I'm not sure. I just know that they're Air Force 1. There's 2 of. So you don't know if the president's on it or not.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, basically. That makes sense.
Like, every time the president flies, there's 2 planes that leave.
Oh,
and one is the false one.
Because, well, I mean, so this is a cool story that I have growing up. So I used to golf right next to an airport. the golf course was like on the airport,
Nice.
and it was very interesting because you could always see planes like, and they had a military base on it, so they always used to play the trumpet and stuff in the morning and night or whatever. I think it's called taps. But one day, Obama, when he was president, he landed there, and they shut down everything. Like there was cops everywhere, and me and my mom I was leaving practice, and I was in the car, and they stopped us at the entrance. In the entrance, you can fully see like where Obama landed, and Air Force One like was just right there, and like I got to see him just walk right up the steps.
That's pretty cool.
And it was intense also because I was like, that's the most powerful man in the world, less than 300 feet from me, and he was just like walked in, and then it taking off, it was like, you know, like easy fighter planes are to maneuver compared to like a bigger plane. It was like a fighter plane. Like it maneuvered so well. It was crazy to see.
Yeah.
Like I still remember that today.
How old were you?
I was 15, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a lot. You know, Obama's presidency was really interesting because, I mean, so he was right after Bush, and so, you know, he's really the first president to get in, you know, post 9/11, realistically, and so much changed because of that. And then the way that he was able to, you know, manipulate his position and like this new era that he was moving into, and he was like, you know, gay people could get married, and like, you know, he was getting right on that. Yeah, we're changing. This is all new. Don't worry about this. And there's just something so like, it feels like a good chess player move where like he got in somewhere he wasn't supposed to get into, and he's like, it's too late. Like he played it so well that it was like,
you look back, he lied about a bunch of stuff and got in.
Nobody was looking into like how solid all the stuff he was saying was, or what it was connected to, or any of that stuff. He just got away with so much because everybody was like, "Oh, great! Like new happy trajectory for country. You know, we're cool and smooth. Like he did a great job. Like he hit every late night show. You know, very personable.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's also funny to see looking back on. I mean, you have these big podcasters too. I mean, I don't want to always bring up Rogan, but it's funny because he talks about how he was a huge Obama supporter and a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. And the more and more time goes by, he's realizing like, oh, these people were a huge detriment to our society. And that, yeah, Obama talked really good, but he was the biggest liar out there.
Right.
And he played the role so well. Like if you go back, he probably played president the best.
That's what I'm saying. Like
everybody loved him, and then he gets out. And
he probably got away with the most as president too.
100%. Yeah, and it's also interesting to think about like he's still active on social media, and like today I saw something where he was like betting on March Madness. I'm like, what are you doing?
And
like,
that's the weird thing too, of where like Obama somehow like is in charge of like. Well, he projects himself to be in charge of some element of like black culture, of like his thoughts matter to all black people, and he like projects that as being like, you know, he's the opinion of it all. I know like he still, I'm pretty sure, every year puts out a list of his favorite songs this entire year, and it's the most like ridiculous thing. I want to say last year, Ice Spice was on it.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably getting paid to say that.
But what is that? What kind of representation is that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, like, I think after MLK Jr. died, which is going to be also nice to see that those files get released because it's hopefully soon. But it like, I think ever since he died, a lot of people, including Barack, have been trying to fill the shoes. Like, who's gonna? Because MLK Jr. was like on a pedestal of like he is it. And then I think people since then have been trying to gain that same notoriety, but I mean, you can't beat the GOAT. Like, and a lot of these people, like, I don't know. It's also interesting, like, and there's a reason he was assassinated. Like, and there's, I mean,
right, like even he didn't, you know, get away with being able to truly think for himself. Like,
yeah, it's,
you know, yeah, it's insane though. like it gets so deep so quick. It's like any of these stories separately is super interesting. Like JFK by himself and just like the stuff that's in the files. That'll be really interesting to know what's going on there. But you pair that with the JFK thing, and it's like, okay, that's one layer to it. I'm sure there's, you could probably start with one topic and then end up on the aliens thing, and it'll all connect somehow to, because it's the same agencies doing stuff, making the decisions, who lets who get away with stuff, how is this happening? Like the method for facilitating all this stuff is exactly the same. Like it's all the same issue, basically, at the end of the day. So I'm excited to see like how much we can connect the dots.
Yeah, and there was something I totally forgot to mention that was in the JFK files, but basically it was about the moon and the time of us trying to go to the moon, and they said that they didn't want the push for the moon to happen because they didn't want to militarize the moon. And in the transcript it said, we can't militarize the moon or control it because the EBEs are in control of the dark side of the moon. And for those who don't know, the dark side of the moon is always the dark side of the moon. Moon, I believe, doesn't rotate,
right?
And it stays the same. So we would never be able to see with a telescope or anything the other side of the moon.
Which, first of all, how is that even possible unless there's something like, because just because it's orbiting our planet, eventually it would pick up a small rotation?
You would think.
Unless something's counteracting that.
Yeah. So, but then you start wondering, like, okay, when the Apollo astronauts hypothetically went up to space, they would have orbited the moon at least once, I believe, before they landed. So they would have seen something. I mean, and now you think about, we have satellites that we can shoot up there, and it's like,
and we're still not looking at it.
Why don't we have pictures of the dark side of the moon? If we're able to send a rover to Mars,
and NASA is showing us, super high definition planets that are billions of light years away.
So it's like, if we can see that, but we can't see the dark side of the moon, I think this is the biggest wake up call to a lot of people, that the government in itself is hiding something. And especially if you have something like that in the, like the EBEs, like what it said in the file was so blatant, or not blatant, it was so broad. And it was like, you're kind of wanting people to be like clueless. But I think the more and more puzzle pieces we get, the more and more we can put together some idea of, ultimately the government is hiding something and they're lying.
Yeah.
And either that means that they did colonize the moon on the dark side, or that they have something going on over there. Because who knows what EBEs mean? Like,
my best guess is extraterrestrial biological entities.
Yeah.
Which is basically an alien.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes, but then the other issue is like, okay, obviously the dark side of the moon is freezing, right? Because it doesn't see sunlight. So it's like, okay, the power, electricity, or the being itself that would have to survive over there could not be human. Like it honestly couldn't be living matter because it's so cold. So it makes you wonder about like colonies, ships inside the planet itself.
I mean, that's just for human conditions though. Like what if they're, because just example, reptiles can live in colder conditions because they're cold-blooded, right? So a reptile just theoretically could probably live on the dark side of the moon, but something similar that's different. Like who knows? It could be like the flood from Halo is up there.
Yeah. So it's,
hopefully not.
But it's one of those things. It's like you start putting the pieces together. Ultimately, people start getting the idea. But like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that they don't release to the public. Obviously, we're gonna start getting more UFO stuff, but it's gonna be the right amount of UFO stuff to still keep us in the dark, in my opinion.
And a lot of it is fake too. It's like,
yeah,
they'll throw out some real stuff, but it's like the more exciting stuff is going to be the fake stuff, and like the more simple stuff that gets overlooked is like just a continuation of like, I feel like aliens in the 60s and the 70s, it was like you were hearing stuff, there was new developments, people were like communicating across like states of like their encounters, comparing stuff, getting to the bottom of something. And then it was like that's all old information.
Yeah.
We didn't get anything for a long time. Then all of a sudden there's alien invasion at the mall in Florida.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, they're here already. It's the future. It's like there's this huge gap of stuff that people aren't looking at.
Yeah. And the other thing that this conversation leads us to is that there was just an archaeological, not dig, but
Well, we should start by saying there's a lot of photos of the dark side of the moon that have like pyramids on them and stuff. A lot of people, or there's photos of the moon that have pyramids on them, and a lot of people theorize there's a bunch more on the dark side as well.
Yeah. So we don't necessarily have photos of the dark side, but on the moon itself, if there is pyramids on the moon, they just found something at the pyramids of Giza, and I can go over it real quick just for those who haven't heard about it. I'm just going to kind of read off my phone.
I think this is exciting stuff. Like I've heard similar stuff, but this is the most like concrete I've seen this put.
Yeah. All right. So this is from somebody named Vicky Verma on X. So it says a wild new story is circulating about the pyramids of Giza, the enormous vertical cylinder structures found 648 meters below the Giza pyramid. I believe it's the second largest pyramid. I think that's the one that they're talking about. If you want to pull up real quick, look up how tall 648 meters is.
Okay.
So I'm going to keep reading. The entire underground system reportedly stretches about 2 kilometers beneath all 3 Egyptian pyramids. So ultimately, a group of researchers, including Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa and Filippo Bondi from the University of Strathclyde, used advanced radar technology called synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, to study the Great Pyramid of Giza. How
It was 648.
Yeah, 648 in meters.
Yeah, so that's 2,125, almost 26, 2,126 feet.
So look at how tall the Burj Khalifa is.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Because I believe that this is 2 times the height of the tallest building that we have currently on the Earth.
Well, no. So technically, the Burj Khalifa is taller by about 500 feet.
Oh, so it's just one size. I heard somebody say 2 size. Okay. Well, still, it's the height of that, but it's in ground. So imagine something that high, but it's in ground, fully encapsulated by dirt and everything surrounding it, from what we can understand.
I mean, and just to put that in perspective, that's like a mile. That's a solid mile, pretty much, give or take a little bit.
Yeah. So they did this study in 2022. They did a press release on March 15th, 2025, explaining their 3D model rendering. So obviously they took all these measurements and metrics, and obviously it didn't pop out a picture like Halo.
Right.
They had to go in and program it into a computer, so that way they brought all of their metrics and numbers together. Basically, they found 5 identical structures connected by geometric pathways near the base of the pyramid. Each structure has 5 horizontal levels and a sloped roof below, and we can try to put up on the screen what this is talking about. Below these 8, so there's basically 5 structures inside the pyramid, and then below these are 8 vertical, hollow, cylindrical structures like wells arranged in 2 parallel rows. So basically be, was it 4 on each side? Right? 8 vertical, so it'd be 4 on each side. These wells spiral downward to a depth of 648 meters, ending in 2 large cube-shaped structures, each about 80 meters wide. The entire underground system stretches about 2 kilometers. Traditional Egyptology teaches that the pyramids were built as tombs for the pharaohs around 2500 BC. However, the complex mathematical patterns found in the pyramids, talking about pi and golden ratio and speed of light, suggest the official story might not explain everything. For example, Nikola Tesla once suggested that the pyramids might harness the Earth's natural energy Christopher Dunn proposed that the Great Pyramid functioned as a power plant, turning vibrations into electricity. So that's basically what it is. We're gonna try to get some photos on the screen.
We'll put something up.
But ultimately, people have always talked, and if you look at the photos, it looks like a giant battery. And everyone's always talked about there has to be something more to this pyramid, because the idea that this could harness energy, I genuinely, in my opinion, based on the limited amount of stuff I have, if the Egyptians did build this, I think that they were building something to try to either bring back a pharaoh from the dead, either like some sort of necromancy or something like that, or they were trying to somewhat control the rain, the sun, or something like that. They were trying to harness the power of their gods or something like that. That'd be my guess.
What I think? Because we were talking about it a little bit earlier. And I was saying basically a lot of the sacred sites on Earth are built on what's called ley lines, but it's essentially this giant grid all over Earth, and there's like specific points that this grid forms, and like pretty much 90% of all the sacred sites that have ever been built have been built on this grid, including the pyramids. If it was some sort of battery or something, it could turn on the grid, and this is where it gets into Nikola Tesla talking about that, because it's theorized that he finally discovered 0-point technology, which is basically limitless energy that's just floating in the air or the ether all around us that you can access, and it's free. It's just like the Bluetooth that's in the air. Like, you just have to turn on your device to be able to do it. I think potentially that pyramid might have turned on the ability to get that free energy.
And that
somehow.
energy, then the question becomes, what is the energy being used for? Is it transportation? Is it levitation? I mean, especially if you're talking about energy, I mean, there could be energy, but then it's like, what are you using? How do you harness it? What are you using it to harness? And unfortunately, as we've talked about a million times, Library of Alexandria did burn down, and there could have been a lot of stuff in there. But if they do end up excavating this, it probably won't be another 10, 15 years before they actually make headway on it. But if they decide to, if the country of Egypt lets them, there could be instructions or reasons that explain why they were doing it. At the end of the day, it could be something that's just like, well, yeah, this is just the technology. How do you not know about this? And it's just a lost form of technology.
And also, they always wonder, how did the pyramids get created? How did they build them? Well, what if it is a levitation? It's like a 0-point technology, instant energy that they can use to levitate stuff. And maybe, there's no like power outlets or wires on this thing or whatever. Yeah. It's in the air. It's a wireless form of technology. And then, the things to move it aren't there. The actual things that got powered were not there anymore, right? Something happened to those. Like, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, especially we know that there was, through biblical times, we know there was a lot of slaves in Egypt also. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of people. So it's like, you start realizing that if you have this technology and you're also including a lot of people, you can get a lot of stuff done. Right. Especially if you're able to levitate stuff and move stuff. But it's hard at the same time, because your mind, all we can do is just imagine something that we don't have the technology for right now. Mm-hmm. But if they are able to harness this, and people talk about there being pyramids in Antarctica too, and some of these pyramids, or my opinion is they're also trying to do this with our technology. There's a Sean Ryan episode where a guy talks about basically they're making this, not a pyramid, but a shape in the sense of like the dimensions of a pyramid in the ice, with these focused like electrical basketballs, basically. And it can make...
Where are they doing this?
Antarctica.
What for?
So apparently, from the interview that he gave, it's a direct energy weapon system, but that's what it can be used as, but it can harness direct energy. And he said I believe he said it was responsible for the earthquake that happened in Turkey or something like that. So at the end of the day, it's like, if it would make sense if, I have to look at the screen because I'm using my hands, but if you're on this side of the world and you use that direct energy to affect the other side of the world and do something on that side, that could have been what it was for. But at the same time, like, I don't know, I'm just like spitballing everything that this could be.
I mean, it really could be anything. We have zero idea.
Yeah.
But you know what else? Do you know what cymatics is?
No.
So it's like, if you want to look this up on YouTube, maybe I'll throw something up, maybe not. But if you take like a speaker, like a big subwoofer, and but you get it flat. Maybe you put like saran wrap over the top, so it's just a nice flat, tight surface, and you put some sand on there, or water, or anything small, right, in form. You put it on there, and then you play certain frequencies. Like you'll start with a low frequency. Once you get to these certain mathematical frequencies that are present in everything, it's like the same frequencies that create the colors in the rainbow and all these different things, the notes in music, all that.
Yeah.
When you play them, the sand instantly jumps to a geometric formation when you hit these frequencies. And it's like, so this form is more in sound than anything.
Interesting.
And so not even just using sound to levitate things, but you could potentially, especially a pyramid being a simple geometric structure, you could for sure create the combination of right frequencies to just have it snap together if you were doing it correctly. It'd be really advanced though.
Because my thing with like the frequencies is like, wouldn't that just kill everybody around it with that high of a frequency to lift a freaking stone? I feel like that would just kill people.
I don't think so, because
unless it's a frequency that doesn't affect us.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be a frequency that doesn't affect us. But if it's also just focused in a specific, like the same way that you could listen to music, but if you went to a really big venue and turned it all the way up, it's going to start to hurt you, internally. Like your organs could even get like shock damage or whatever. But yeah, if it's not focused at you, it's focused at the ground. It still might be just like loud and obnoxious. Maybe you want some hearing protection or something, but I have no idea, but it's 100% possible.
And it's weird to think about that was, only 4,000 years ago, based on like, they're saying that that's when the pyramids were built. If that's the case, like, I don't know.
I don't even know if I believe that, because you've seen all those things about like the flower of life being laser etched into stuff way before the pyramids, but also like all across the world with people that wouldn't have had any communication with each other, but specifically, oh man, what's that place called? I want to say it's like in Egypt.
That thing that's in the rock?
Sort of. It's like it was a city that was somewhat recently uncovered, but it was covered in sand, and then they get down in there, and it's like another thing where it's like, okay, this top layer that was like the first part that they discovered because it was sticking out of the sand is all newly built but shitty, sort of. And then the stuff that was there that's much older is perfectly laser etched, cut, whatever.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And it's pretty much the oldest dated ruins, to my knowledge, that we have discovered yet. And there's a perfectly etched, laser etched flower of life in there. Like super, super good. It's Tebegle Tepe.
Okay.
I could be saying that wrong, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, especially seeing all these things come about, and if that, like, even if the structure that we're talking about is real, I don't know, it makes me just giggle when people, like, especially if that was human technology, like, we are so behind.
Yeah.
Like, if all we're doing is making iPhones, but at the end of the day, they didn't have the distractions. Like, you had slaves that all they did was eat and work. You had rulers that all they did was enjoy and motivate people by death. And that was it. Like, it was so basic. Whereas nowadays, stuff's not getting done because there's so many distractions. So it's interesting to see the culmination of humans coming together, and like what that looked like that long ago. And it wasn't that long ago.
Super impressive. Like they always say we couldn't do that again if we tried with all of our current technology.
Yeah, it's like if everyone's working together, like, you'd be surprised. I mean, that's why something so small as, like, if you tell somebody to build a structure out of popsicle sticks, but then you add 5 people to all pool their ideas together.
And they're actually focused on it and not bickering with each other.
Stuff changes and stuff gets intense. I mean, just someone's ability to process. I mean, this whole thing goes down to like the human mind, how powerful thought and imagination and creativity is, that if you use one person's imagination and then use somebody else's. The example I was thinking of today was like they have those chess, like the uber big chess bots.
Yeah.
What's the biggest one right now? It's
I don't know.
I forget. I'm blanking on the name.
I thought you were just talking about like the ones that are like of streamers
Stockfish.
or top.
It's called Stockfish.
Yeah,
So it's like it's basically a bot that is like super good at chess. It's based off of ELOs. I'm not going to go into that, but it's based off of a human ranking versus a ranking that's basically unattainable.
Right.
The ranking means nothing in real life. But I was thinking about, okay, if one person is playing this bot, right, they're going to be at a disadvantage. But if you have two people playing this bot, the advantage is going to go more neutral. And the more and more minds that you put towards beating that bot, the more and more the probability of being neutral goes up. Right? Because at the end of the day, if you're playing something that's practically perfect, you're not going to be able to beat it. All you're going to be able to do is draw it or like be neutral. So I started thinking about, at some point, the human mind collectively coming together could be so great. And for me, I just use that example of like the chess bot. But if you pulled all this information together, then it would make sense if you're able to make a structure that big or geometrically figure out stuff.
It's almost like if you had a big issue or a problem and you brought everybody together and they all sat down, it's like 100 people, and then you just go, okay, go. You know, you'll explain it and say, go. And then they're all going to sit there in silence, dead silence, critically thinking about that, not talking to the other person like, hey, so should we do this? Or, you're throwing that person off. They're not able to get deep down and really find solutions. Like if everybody was just quiet, focus on what they're doing, and when they think of something, then present it, you know, but not in a distracting way, right? Like leave the room, go to, you know, whatever, come back, whatever it is. But if you just had that level of focus on like 100,000, you know, 1 million people, that would be crazy.
And that's why you look at what's happening in our government, and money is such a bad issue because people are just bought and paid and basically told, hey, don't think about this, I'm going to give you money.
Yeah.
Because imagine, those are supposed to be the best and the brightest of our representatives for our country to put us in the best situation. Why are we trillions of dollars in debt? These people should be smart, intelligent, or that's at least what we portray them as. But they go there and all they do is bicker and don't get anything done. It makes you realize that money is a big motivator. And when you look at these civilizations, the motivator was, you want to live or you want to die? Because you're going to do what I tell you to do. And I mean, there's some barbarity to that.
There is, but there's a lot of strength that comes out of that. And like you know, we don't test people. A lot of people that natural selection would have taken out are just hanging out now because things are cozy for them and they're just allowed to. But if it wasn't like that, you really had to prove yourself and survive every day. And it was like, yeah, you might not like the guy that's in charge, but like you can respect that he's able to do whatever he does. And if you don't like it, you're going to have to figure out how to do something about it or die.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great motivator.
And you know what's really funny? Like on the topic of what I was just saying, that like you're either a slave or you're a ruler. You know, people get so up in arms about, oh, let's take this statue down because this statue represents slavery. It's like, I don't see you throwing a fit about anything in Egypt or anything in South America where they were sacrificing and killing people and they were all slaves. Like no one's throwing a fit about those societies.
Nobody cares.
No, but it's interesting, like how people can pick and choose what they like. It's, you know.
Okay, you know what the issue is, and I'm looking at you, Europe. Everybody over there, right? And it's not the people over there, although they indulge in it, but it comes from like a history of not being American, basically. And it's like it started from when we left Britain, and we, you know, so they were hating on us from that point. Then they turn around, they're forming the European Union, doing all this stuff. Then they collectively hate on us. And really the biggest thing is they all used to be scumbags and do a lot of different things. And, during both the world wars, there were some scumbag moments all around the world. And then after it, everybody got to rebrand. They're doing it super aggressively. And then they want to make slavery a 100%. It only exists in the US. It never happened in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, then they used that to put themselves up on a pedestal above us.
Yeah.
And now they talk down from that pedestal about what we should be doing and all. Like, that's the crazy dilemma.
Yeah. East India Trading Company, like all these things. Slavery was not started in the United States.
Nope.
It literally came over. It has always existed. It just made a natural progression to the United States because that's what happened. And then people just think.
And guess what? We ended it.
Yeah. And everybody saw, oh, like we're going to stop because it's not popular anymore. There's some places that probably still do it.
Sure.
But it's more like on the down
But
low.
worldwide, it's like, just like how.
It's frowned upon now.
You can't. You can't use a flamethrower in war anymore. It's a war crime. It's like, we've set that standard. You can't have slaves anymore to actually be a first world country or anything close.
It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like I was saying, that used to be that. I mean, whether you like it or not, this is just what happened. Slaves were the reason that all these great structures and things were built.
100%. And I'll be honest, like, slavery is such it's hard to fully define, like, because things, you go, that's barbaric, okay, you're trapped, that's slavery. But then on like a super modern level, people are slaves to ideas and culture and beliefs, credit, the government, whatever it is. And there's like a lot of in-between gray areas of like, what is an army? What is, what are these big groups that are dedicated to anything? And it's like, at a certain point, if you want to get something done, you'll become slave to yourself. You know? So it's like, it's tough to say because there's a lot of power in numbers and you'll never be able to do certain things by yourself.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be able to have a giant group because then there won't be groups. So
yeah,
just the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you can look back in the different societies, the past, like we're talking like the Roman Empire, all these empires, like they went, I mean, Sparta or whatever, they would go take over people, but you wouldn't see mass slaughters. Sure, there was some, but the idea was, okay, now we have people that will go and work for us for free, right? That was the idea, and that's how a lot of these big...
It's a fair exchange at the end of the day,
and that's
sort of.
And that's one of the reasons why people were able to build like these giant empires. And I mean, for the United States, it's interesting too, because it's like there wasn't that like there was with like Rome or something like that. It was very like profit based and very...
And it was very select, like who controlled those profits and what they went to.
And it's also like a weird thing. It's like I don't want to say it was more dehumanized, but in a way it was more dehumanizing in America than it was in all these other empires, because it was so acceptable that you were born into a slave family, you're a slave, like it was its own class in society, and it was just accepted. And then when it came over to America, it was like very dehumanizing and stuff. And I think a lot of people, I mean, we saw the Civil War, there was a lot of realization that there is humanity behind it and that it can't be a class and that there shouldn't be a class of it. But it's also just interesting to see how it stopped. Like it didn't continue on. But anyway,
I think it seemed like everywhere else it was just a product of history and like how things develop, and then over here it was like it's a sickness. It's this crazy like racism thing. It's like that was never the driving factor. That might be maybe an end result of why a lot of people were racist.
It's all hindsight too, from what we're seeing. But.
But it's like, and people don't give credit to. I mean, shout out all the slaves that actually built stuff and did things right. Our country wouldn't have had the growth and the chance that it had to last this long without that. But I just think the stain that our country carries because of that thing, and it being reinforced and constantly brought up by everybody else too, that's super hypocritical.
But like you're saying, like people...
Does no justice.
People who were like Britain was like the king of slavery,
dude.
and we get accused of like, I'm not saying that our slavery was better than their slavery, but it's interesting that there is not a unanimous, like, it's interesting how I don't know, it's just
And like they went to Africa to get slaves.
Yeah.
Like they didn't,
yeah, I don't know, it's such a weird topic. But I mean, going back to the Egypt thing and like all these civilizations, especially you see are they called pyramids down in South America? Or is there a different name for them? Like
they're like temples or something. I don't know, but yeah,
But
they're like squared off pyramids.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. First of all, like, how do you how do you find the people who are smart enough to understand these things, right? And then the other thing is like, how do you, obviously you're using death as a motivator, but like, if you think about it, running a business is super difficult nowadays because everyone's really independent.
Yeah.
But like, those people knew how to control people.
Well, just like I was saying with if everybody got together and were silent until they really thought something, I think people were sort of more intuitive when we didn't speak as much. And it was like somebody would figure something out and then show somebody, and it's like, whoa, look at that. You can't argue with these results. It's not about how they present the thing or explain something or if they can explain it or whatever it is. It's just like you have a track record of like, you're smart, you're figuring things out. Okay, you're showing. And like people learn from the way that you, and if you could just say, like nowadays we're so fast foodized that we go, there's a whole skill that somebody would dedicate their life to, sum it up in 2 sentences, tell me how to do that, and I'll follow that little thing. You're not really looking into it or taking all this information. But if somebody was the only person that could do something, everybody would be watching them like a hawk to learn what it is. And every time they do it, little differences. And like, I just think we're dumber for the way that we communicate. And we think we're really efficient with the internet. But, man, cavemen got a lot done.
I mean, you look at Rome, they created their own type of concrete. You look at the, what are they called? I guess the tribes or the people down in South America, like they created their own fertilizer. Mm-hmm. Like you see all these things that like are huge, like able to build these structures and stuff. Like, and then you look at us and we're like so small in comparison of our understanding, and like, I don't know, it's just so weird.
Well, and like medicine and stuff, like Native Americans, just literally experimenting with all the different plants, and you have to figure out all this stuff. There's trial and error. Somebody probably died along the way, right? But just that firsthand experience of like, and then teaching everybody else too. Like everybody learns on their own nowadays, and then we like safeguard that information a lot of the times.
Death is a big motivator though.
It is.
Because the more and more I think about it is like, if you have 1 million people that are under your control and you say, you can either work for me or you're going to get killed. And it's like, boom, you get stuff done.
Wouldn't you rather, in a sort of way, like, the safety of everyday life is great and like the consistency, but in some sort of way, wouldn't you almost rather a more cutthroat world to a degree, but where, people are allowed to conquer, explore, do all these different things? It's like the variety of life and how much you could get out of your one lifetime of living like that compared to the mundane, what somebody's going to get through the internet in modern day America.
Well, I think it would I wouldn't prefer it, but I understand you get the sense of purpose from those, because there was honor. Honor was a big thing back then. And sorry. If you were told, okay, I have to perform or I will die, it'll force you to be the best of the best and live the best life because of that motivator, right? Because there's purpose. The purpose was don't die, right? The purpose was I have a family, don't die, whatever, right? Nowadays, people don't have that. And it's like the motivator is money, but what does money bring? It brings leisure time. It brings, I don't have to work, right? So it's like a counter of what it
There's
used to be.
There's good and bad all over.
Well, 100%. But I'm just saying, like, there was a reason why stuff got done is because people took the pride of, well, I'm stuck in this situation, so because of the fear of death, I'm going to be the best. And nowadays, it's like the the motivator used to be a lot of it would be money and prestige, but nowadays people are just like, I can make a couple million and then just go party. Where it used to be like, well, I can make millions and set my family up for generations. So I don't know. It's just like it's like a weird shift in the culture.
Yeah, 100%. A little bit off topic, but we were talking about that Egypt stuff. And so Egypt had hieroglyphs all over. And, you know, people are always trying to interpret what some of those mean and reinterpret stuff. But it's sort of related to sigils. You know what sigils are?
Mm-mm.
So this all comes back from like King Solomon out of the Bible, right? Okay. And we already talked a little bit about that stuff, but basically, supposedly, according to ancient texts and all that, you know, this man was the first person to be able to control demons, you know, and command them, you know, basically to do his will by, you know, basically God allowed him to do that and told him, you know, to do that. And so a lot of like demonology and, you know, modern like ritualistic magic and all this weird stuff comes directly all from King Solomon.
Interesting.
The Masonism entirely comes from King Solomon.
I know that.
Like all of this stuff, a lot of it goes back to that. But the sigils are essentially a symbol that's created out of like the demon's name, but it's like a pictograph.
Oh.
And you're supposed to use that to invoke the demon or summon it or whatever. And there's 72 of them. And so if you get, and this is a lot, you can do some research on this, but there's 72 of them, and they're sort of like a flip side of a coin sort of thing. You know how they say that some people would say or speculate that like Jesus and Lucifer were the same person, two sides of a different coin, right? Two stories told completely separate, two different perspectives.
There's some religions that believe that, yeah.
Right, duality. It's just like, so there's 72 demons, but there's also 72 angels, and they're the same entities, just so different
like
sides of it.
The yin and yang type situation.
And so it's also the same inspiration for Islam. You know, the 72 virgins in heaven? Those are the 72 angels.
Interesting.
That's one side of it, right? And so these demons, but they were actually called jinn, and that's where genie comes from. And that's all connected. So this is a lot. But anyway, there's pictures that they use to like summon these demons. If you've taken a look at, you know, you're familiar with emojis.
Yeah.
There's like a whole list. I'll pull up something on my phone, but where it's like all of the emojis somehow perfectly have it. Well, not all of them, but at least all the 72. Yeah. There's an emoji that matches up pretty much exactly, and it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, like the laughing crying emoji, the zipper mouth emoji,
what?
The nerd emoji. Yeah, I'll have to pull it up, but it's crazy.
And those are like hieroglyphs on like somewhere in Egypt?
No, it's
or you're saying just kind of like they have hieroglyphs. It's like the same thing.
Just that these sigils exist here, and I might have to put something up, or I don't know. Some people feel weird about that, so maybe I'll not do that, but we'll see. So there's those. Those are all the 72 of them. And I think I have another photo on there to show you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's like they're like geometric shapes, but those geometric shapes could be interpreted into like a same structure that's hidden within the emoji.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Dude,
that is crazy.
They're all super like, oh, yeah.
Wow.
When you see it, you see it.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, that was something interesting that I kind of found out recently.
That would not surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me either, but
there's so much stuff like that too. I mean, even getting on to like the Masonic stuff, right? Like there's so much of that that's hidden in our like monetary system or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Like my favorite one, I told you this before, but I just want to put it out there. So water freezes at 32 degrees, right? Mm-hmm. That means the melting point is 33 degrees.
Yeah, anything above 32, basically.
But like, that's the highest degree of a Mason, a 33rd degree Mason. You know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And for a lot of people that didn't connect the dots at home, you're welcome. That's crazy. Because, like, that's wild.
Dang. And it's also interesting, like, on the dollar, getting into just, like, speculation, but, like, I'm pretty sure the top of the dollar used to say, like, the United States of America.
Yeah.
And then now it says, like, the Federal Reserve. And it's like, this money's not backed by the United States of America anymore. It's backed by the Federal Reserve. Which is, like, to me, I'm like, going back to, I think, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about how you take gold away from people so that money can then be the controlling factor. Because if gold was the currency, then you can go find your own gold. You can trade, kind of like Bitcoin. But if money becomes the means of power, then you can control everybody because they have to use that dollar basically. So it's interesting to see the Federal Reserve. If it's not tied to the United States, then it's just a global hegemonic power that's just
It is
over everything, which then opens up the conversation of the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, or London or whatever, and then the Vatican. Like, all these, at the end of the day, there's so many pieces that are like putting this puzzle together of like.
I'm fascinated by the way that the world banking system was able to get established. Like, they pulled the rug out from everybody. Like, they didn't know what they were getting into. They laid the groundwork perfectly, like, very slowly. And, like, you know, that's a 100-year plan minimum to really set that up correctly. And the way that they, you know, I mean, there's just some gullible king out there that's looking for, that must have been the future, the promises of the future back in the day. But it's crazy how well that worked. And, like, everybody uses currency.
Yeah.
And everybody has debt.
Yeah,
And our debt is to the Federal Reserve.
So the interesting thing about that, you just said, going back to slavery, debt was the biggest driver of slavery back in the old civilizations. If you went into debt, you would become that person's slave until you paid off your debt. There's a certain type of slave that's what that's called. We went over it probably in history class when we were younger, but I forget what type of slave it was, honestly, off the top of my head. I'll remember tonight when I'm about to go to sleep, probably. But it makes you think that, okay, they're recreating a debt-based society. And for me, it's like, okay, that only leads to kind of like what we were talking about. Like, you then can control people and say, hey, you're like, it goes very mob.
Social credit score in China is the same thing. You know how that works also? It's basically like you get letter grades. You can be an A, B, or C rank citizen. And if you go below C, like, you're probably going to die.
Yeah, like something
crazy. Because also, they, like, abduct people just for talking bad about the government over there.
Yeah, of course.
And brainwash them and put them back. It's weird.
Yeah.
But supposedly. They they have the classless society. And you might start, you know, if you've done everything perfect throughout your life, you can be an A. But if you do one thing wrong, you're going to be like a B for, I think it's like 3 years.
Yeah.
You're stuck to being a B for 3 years. But you do one more minor thing, you get set to C for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's like the amount of time it takes to even potentially make your way back is so, like, detrimental, you know, like, it affects you so negatively to be put down this rank, and then everybody treat you that way for 8 years, and then you have this 8 years of history of you being that, and what it's like hard to.
It's a Black Mirror episode, and they also do have like facial scanners over there.
Yeah.
And so if you want to go into a restaurant or a grocery store, you have to scan your face first so that they know who's there. They basically want to know where everyone is at one time. But then also, if you're on that bad list, it denies you like entry into like public transport or getting groceries or stuff. So it's like, it fully casts you out of society, making an example out of you so that other people don't do it. So it's not necessarily that they care that you get off the list or whatever. They're just like, we're going to use you as an example to scare everybody else. So it's like, if you pair that with pairing the debt-based society, it goes right back into a two-class system of rulers and slaves.
So is China not just a more successful, more historied version of North Korea, essentially? Where there's a fabricated essence of society that they project to the world, but it's not the reality of what's going on?
I would say yes, but at the end of the day, North Korea, I think, is just, I think that it's a buffer zone that China has created between South Korea Basically they gave themselves a little bit of free border, because if something happened, they would just invade North Korea. They'd get rid of Kim, and like they would reestablish that buffer
Do you think
zone.
maybe it's a roundabout way for them to indirectly threaten America with nuclear attacks without it being them? Like North Korea is just the scapegoat because there has to be some sort of Asian power that's some sort of threat on paper.
100%. Yeah, especially they could scare Kim into being like, "Hey, you're gonna do this or you're done." Like,
Yeah,
because
they have the power.
he knows, especially like he thinks he's a god. I don't think he thinks. He tells everybody he is in his country, right? They all worship him as like whatever, but he knows he's not, right? So it's like he's playing this little game and he loves it, right? He gets to be in charge and play this game, but then China could easily, I think they're the ones who are giving him that power to, treat all these people terribly.
What if he grew up really thinking he is a god and like that's how his dad raised him? And
Well, he could have, but I mean, he probably got really sick one day because he's been sick. He's overweight, like he smokes. Like he probably got really sick one day and then realized like I'm not.
he made leather jackets illegal, so he's the only one that can wear them.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's a psychopath to the fullest extent. But I mean, I don't know. I think that whole thing in itself is an op, just to see like full power, just somebody full power. I don't know. It's just, there's so many weird things going on. And at the same time, you have all the virus technology and like, then that goes back into the money system. There's so many areas of control.
It's really weird. And, a lot of this is just theorized, just halfway making it up off of possibilities or things that I've seen. But Asia has this crazy long history of ninjas and, like really just great intelligence work and infiltrating stuff. And, but also it just makes me think. So there's, I'm pretty sure this was a real group in China. The Dai Li was like during one of the dynasties. It was like the ultimate, like secret, like if there was an Illuminati secret service of China, and it's like you don't want to mess with those people, right?
Okay.
And they'll come, suicide you or do one of those things way back in the day. But it was basically like this elite group that forced people to control because they're invisible. They don't technically exist, but you'll encounter them, so you're gonna stay in your place.
Yeah.
That's happened in like for a long time in different ways, just in Asia, period. But the most interesting one is like Japan, because I can see where China is sort of still that classic model of like everybody's a little bit scared, so they just go with the easy thing and pretend like China's great. And it's probably not so bad if you do that. But Japan is weird because it's like they have that same type of thing, but in the most non-confrontational way possible, where it's like for the betterment of others. It's like this very respectful, like the way that they're able to package that up into a belief system that they already have is actually really impressive. Like because it's great over there and it actually works out the best because people are in line, crime's really low, they do all this stuff, and they're able to focus and innovate like they're supposed to. Like whoever's controlling Japan, it's great.
Yeah.
Just as far as progress goes.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many weird things about our world and everything, and then looking at everything that's been dropping the past couple of days, and man, I think I have two thoughts about kind of everything that's culminating right now. Is that they're trying to put a lid on everything by saying that they're releasing everything to just kind of finally like shut down the topics that, like, for instance, I listen to the Daily Wire a lot. I mean, I listen to Ben Shapiro's show a lot, but he believes that the JFK assassination was just cut and dry. Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
No shot, dude.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I start hearing more and more people saying stuff like that, and it's like, why do people not want? I mean, the whole point of conspiracy is because there's enough evidence to be curious of something being like misleading. So it's like for people just to be like, no, that just sucks. Like then, because then you have to look at the whole Trump situation. It's like, why did the person who tried to assassinate Trump have 6 phones and his house was medically scrubbed, and they cremated his body immediately after it happened. Like, that's conspiracy
Yeah.
because there's clues there that lead to something nefarious. So for me, whenever I hear people say it's cut and dry, like that's what the evidence says, like there was a big investigation. I'm like, who's telling you that?
And to me, it's like the obvious thing is like, oh, he's Jewish, and there's papers saying that, you know, oh, supposedly either they paid the Jews or something, and they assassinated JFK. That's like from the papers. And but the thing is, to me, is like, if those papers came out, and I'm, you know, an innocent Jewish guy, and like everybody Jewish that I know has never been involved in anything, and like that's just the truth of the matter, I wouldn't be so quick to just, you know, slap a coat of paint over this and pretend like it doesn't exist. It's like it highlights a bigger problem almost. Like it makes you and, you know, the people that you're representing there by association look bad or somewhat guilty, or just, you know, not willing to look into something or whatever. It almost is like the same thing that happened to white people, where it's like, if people don't, you know, because like basically if somebody very Jewish went through that and was like, wow, that's crazy, you know, like that's something, you go, oh, okay, not all Jewish people are in this, you know, like there's good Jewish people out there, and people can think freely or what they want. There's not just one opinion on what it is. And so like, just like how, you know, white people weren't speaking up about anything or whatever. And so the narrative was like all the bad stuff. Like that's sort of what's happening here, is like, you're not allowing any room for anything. So it's like, you know, the rumor mill will culminate on things, and like the internet will take it to the next level. And I don't know, I just wouldn't be so quick to put a fresh coat of paint on top of it, you know, let it breathe, acknowledge it as like, well, that's, you know, let's let this develop, see what's, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because for me, it's like, especially the JFK files, if certain types of people, cultures, or groups like the CIA, if people are implicated in these files, you're going to start seeing people that are going to come out and like defend or hide stuff, and not, like, for instance, I haven't heard Tulsi Gabbard come out and say like, we can't believe the CIA did this, or I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened. Like, I haven't heard anything. So it's, for me, it's like I said, I think a lot of people are trying to put a lid on a lot of things and be like, okay, like that's done. Like,
well,
let's get over
it's
it.
it's like putting your order in at a restaurant. You're like, okay, well, it's coming, so I can be patient. You know, I'll eat this bread for now. You're focused on something else entirely, and yeah, because I don't know. It was like most people didn't know the truths, and the people that really did, it was sort of like, you know, this special club.
Yeah.
Not that it meant anything, but most people just didn't know, and it would be a rare person that you could even talk about these things. So like, there was deep conversations all over the internet, but deep on the internet. And now it's like common TikToks of stuff that everybody here, it's so watered down, but widely available. But then to dive deep and collect all the fine pieces to put together a really good example just don't exist. And it takes too much effort for the most part.
Yeah.
It's like, it's good and bad, because, you know, I think a lot of people are like, have woken up to something, and it's sort of set them on the path to realizing there's more at play. But also it's like, people are gullible now. People are, you know, they'll trust anything, won't do their own research, but also don't fully believe anything. You know, it's still a very like programmable state.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about too that I'm not like, oh, that's what I believe.
Oh
like,
yeah, 100%.
There's stuff that like, it's just an interesting to have those conversations. First of all, because we're able to, thankfully, we have the First Amendment where we can just have conversations and accuse people hypothetically of
Amen, brother.
nope, that's your fault. Like, you are the reason. Like, because even at the end of the day, if the CIA didn't assassinate him, right, at the end of the day, like, it could be very possible that nope, it was just weird circumstances and coincidence. But the ability for me to be like, nope, that was the CIA, or I could say things. It doesn't matter what I say, but it just the ability to have hypothetical conversations and put together puzzle pieces.
Well, it's like you're highlighting a possibility, and it's like even if it's a theoretical possibility, it's like you might even just need a place filler. So you're like, I'm connecting all these dots. There's
Yeah.
something over here that would make sense that could happen.
Yeah.
What would that be? So I'm gonna make up something to fill that spot. But then you might connect more dots and go, that's not it. Scratch that out. Maybe this.
Yeah.
But you're never 100% on it. It's like that's how you figure things out.
Yeah.
That's just how you figure stuff out.
I wonder. It's also interesting. I mean, this would be really fun to research, but if you were to look at the people who make decisions, kind of like JFK was making decisions and it got him killed, if people started to do like, hey, we want to send a drone to the dark side of the moon, or we want to go unearth stuff in Egypt, or like, if you start seeing these people do stuff, either they get scared and then they're like, oh, nothing was there, and they fully like 180 turn around. You see it happen with a lot of people who are bribed, politicians, judges,
Yeah, scientists.
and that's a very small like example, but like bigger sense, like it'll be interesting to see somebody, especially like someone like Trump, who's out there and like saying stuff, right? And to see somebody like that, if they were just to like change their mind, like Kanye, right? He's doing all this crazy stuff. Imagine if one day he was just like, boop, nope, that didn't happen, just fully change. Something drastic, like a 180 of personality, is going to be interesting to hone into in the next coming years. Because if you have somebody like Trump who's like, I want to release everything, but if one day he's just like, nope, never mind. Or, hey, we're going to not talk about that anymore. Or something like that. But in the sense of like, if something were to happen with, let's go to the dark side of the moon, or let's go to these things. I don't know. It's just like very interesting.
I think there's so much at stake right now, and a lot of people would agree for different reasons. But what I mean is that like we're almost laying the foundation for the future, most definitely. But like my mind goes to Star Wars, and like we're almost building the Republic right now.
Yeah.
And like just think about how important all the foundational bricks are, right?
Yeah.
And so I think these internal politics that we have now will continue to exist like hundreds of years in the future, and like the things that happen now are going to affect how those things happen, you know, because history repeats itself, but it's like slightly different. We like to learn from history, and yeah, I don't know. It's weird though, because it's almost uncanny how things repeat themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that we'll have figured out how to get along
Yeah.
anytime soon.
You know, it'd be really interesting if there was a group of like 50 people who, from an age of like, let's say they all got together and they're all 20, and they said, we're going to not invade, but infiltrate every single not high ranking, but pretty big ranking of like Masons, United States government, Mossad, like
That's got to be a thing.
NASA. Like if you had a giant group of people who all like they didn't have a history, so they wouldn't, but they all like fit into the piece where they would need to go into that puzzle, right? Like if it was Mossad, they were all like, it was an Israeli citizen who had no background, right? Like you have 100 people that all simultaneously have access, and then they all just release everything at one time. So then it's like you get everything and there's no like stopping it. Like that would be interesting to see.
It would be interesting. I mean, man, it's crazy because that's like so top secret. You wouldn't really get the details on it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost impossible to like somebody has to be trying to do that to an extent, like just infiltrating and have some spies.
100%. But it's like
they're
a death,
leaking information.
It's a death wish though too. Like you have to have people that are
100%.
dedicated, especially if you're gonna go air out someone's dirty laundry like that, especially if they're secrets, you're gonna die. Like,
But it's also different because like if you were a suicide bomber or something, like yeah, you're gonna die, but you go do your thing and you're gonna kill a bunch of people, whatever. It's like you have to be an elite level spy, a good actor, have really good composure,
everything.
but also have a really refined skill set to be able to leak that information.
And your parents and your grandparents can't be notable.
Right.
It's like it's like something out of a movie where you'd have to be like, it all just works itself out.
Well,
like,
you know, in like a lot of the secret societies, there's secret societies. It's like, yeah, that's totally a thing. And I can imagine, man, it's crazy because have you ever met like a Mason?
Yeah.
In person? Yeah, it's always interesting because it's never like they're always super normal, like
Very.
very Christian, or like, you know, I don't know. But to me, it's so interesting to see their perspective because yeah, they're probably like not in the secret society in that secret society. They're just surface level member so that they
Yeah.
can be in the photo and be like,
Just a
look, we have
club.
good people.
Yeah,
It's just a club, you know?
Yeah.
And
Then you get one layer deeper, and then one layer deeper, and then it becomes like it's like there's a secret society amongst those guys who the other people don't know about. And
well, there's so many, like, you know, I was just saying 33rd degree Mason is the highest degree of Mason you can be.
then
There's a lot of 32nd degree Masons, like people that get all the way up to that 32nd degree and just never cross that threshold.
yeah.
And it's like, to my understanding, unless you get 33rd, you're not even a Mason. Like you're just a pawn on the board.
Yeah, you're just being used to help somebody
100%.
else get there.
And just to go a little bit into it, there's a huge duality thing to it where, you know, I'm talking about the flip side of the coins and, you know, Jesus and Lucifer and all that type of stuff. When you get into it, it's a very Christian organization and it's all like, it seems very biblically based and like holy. And then, you know, a lot of people will say like, oh, the Illuminati is doing satanic stuff. Like, where's that crossover? It's because, you know, so probably the 33rd, once you get there, it's like that new information that gets applied to all the old stuff. That kind of flips it on its head, and then you overlay each other. It's a weird.
It could be like
system.
rival gangs too, like societies that hate each other, kind of like the what are the McCoys
and
Hatfields and McCoys. It could be something like that, to where it's like there's always been this amnesty of these two societies, kind of like the yin and yang thing you were talking about. That they like,
well, like Yale and Harvard.
yeah,
Or, you know, something like that. But it's deeper than that because,
100%.
you know, Yale has the Skull and Bone Society.
I don't know what Harvard has though.
I'm not sure what they have. And man, good job, Harvard, right? Like, nice.
Nobody knows what it is.
And it's so obvious, like the Skull and Bones because of Bush at Yale. But
Yeah.
which crazy. You wouldn't have thought he went to Yale. Growing up, I always thought like if you went to Yale, you would come off as smart. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
What's that thing also? When people do that,
it's a mudra, which is basically it. You know, it ties into energy, the flow of energy, and symbolism, and a lot of that stuff that we were talking about before. But like, basically, it just allows you to unlock, you know, part of your brain or think on a deeper level.
So it's
but
not
each
like
each individual one, it's sort of like how you supposedly have different chakras, and they all like represent something different about you. It's like you can sort of tune into certain different
interesting
mindsets. Some
I
are good
always
for
thought
thinking.
I thought it was like a quote unquote secret sign that people were giving each other, like, oh, I'm on this team.
Well, sometimes people use those things for that. Like, I mean, that's a very, because doing it, like, first of all, a lot of the time, this is the thinking one, right? And a lot of people will like mix them up. You know, that's the thinking one. But like doing the straight triangle like that,
Yeah.
that one I do think is a little bit of a hint one. And it's just like throwing up the rock like Jay-Z would do.
Yeah,
It's like it's all the same.
Yeah, because I see people do that, and I'm like, that's not even like, that's so obvious. Like, it's not even like you're trying to hide something.
Dude,
but like, if there's a society on top of a society, it's like maybe that does mean something. Like
100%. It's so easy. Like
cool, I got them in. I got what I wanted out of that person.
look,
Boom,
man,
there's
it's all symbolism, right? And so
Yeah.
we pick up on some of this stuff, and it's like, okay, if you had half the symbols, if you had half the alphabet, and then I show you a storybook, you're like, I understand some of this. Look at this. This means something, but you don't understand the rest to interpret. If they show, like, okay, let's say everybody knows about Illuminati. That's like the most surface level you could be.
Yeah.
So maybe you show that. That's symbol one.
Yeah.
But then so people go, oh, what's that? You look into that. Then maybe you have to pay attention to find the deeper symbol and then the deeper one. And they're communicating a long message of exactly what it is over a course of time.
Yeah.
Because there's like, I mean, it really goes deep, but there's the Trilateral Commission, the Committee of 300. You know, there's some very like high level stuff that's like there's a pyramid inside the pyramid of what, you know, it can pretty much goes forever, and supposedly God is at the top, but yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Masonism is really interesting though. Like I love the fact that like dude, the game chess, like that is their game. Like that's 100% like, and that all comes from King Solomon too, like the way that it is, the checkerboard floors and all that. It's really interesting though. Like if you look into all the systems, like just everything, architecture, It's everywhere. But it doesn't mean anything to most people.
Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah. Gosh, there's so many like weird, like once you get into the rabbit hole, you can just keep going straight down.
It spirals quick.
Very, very
It definitely
quickly.
does.
Especially when you're trying to like tie in all these different ropes. And it's like that, you know, that thing where you have all those red lines on the wall connecting to like, you see in the movies where someone's trying to like the strings or
like
whatnot.
Charlie from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, I mean, there's, yeah, that one's funny.
Dude, okay, so I saw this the other day too. Okay, so percentage of millionaires in the United States, that's the 1%.
Yeah.
Percentage of Congress that's a millionaire, 50%. Just think about that. That's crazy, dude.
That is weird.
Like, I mean, and you're going to say that, like, I mean, first of all, it's like we're always talking about, oh, should the rich pay for everything? And of course, they're like, oh, you don't actually want the rich to pay for everything and whatever they're going to say. But to realize, like, yeah, half of those people, I mean, all the people in the room, but realistically, they are the 1%.
Yeah.
And for them to defend that like they're not, and they're pulling the wool over our eyes.
Yeah.
And they get away with it.
So I do want to read the thing we were talking about, the EBEs.
Yeah.
I forgot that I had taken a photo of it, so I kind of just want to like read it so people understand the full context of that, because I thought that was like pretty big. So this is from what I believe it's an excerpt from just a report that was in the JFK files. But it says basically this is just a continuation page from a different page. So it's starting in the middle of a sentence, but it says during a nuclear crisis by interfering with the guidance and targeting computers of the Atlas ICBMs based in Turkey. ICBM is Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. In 1960, President Eisenhower approved a joint defense plan written by MJ-12 that in the event the U.S. came under a nuclear attack by the USSR through EBE deception, the United States would not retaliate with proposed USAF SIOP. I don't know what that stands for. And only after confirmation of UFO misidentification launch surgical strikes on the USSR. The purpose of the strike was to take out USSR commanders and control infrastructure, preventing all-out nuclear war. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy was briefed by MJ-12 and was told that the EBE deception was the reason the Soviets wanted to place first strike nuclear weapons in Cuba and therefore restricted U.S. nuclear forces from initiating the grand tour to bomber strikes. General LeMay was so furious with JFK that he secretly gave orders to SAC SAC to go ahead with SIOP in the event the U.S. perceived a first strike warning from Russia. So I'm guessing SIOP is basically get rid of the president. So I've always had a thought that whenever you become president, you are told like, hey, we have rules and laws that are hidden from the public that say, if we need to, we will kill you. If we think the betterment of humanity, the betterment of our country is over what you do, that we're going to kill you. So I believe that's what that is talking about, the SIOP. Anyway, so in 1963, JFK sought to ease the uneasy tension by extending cooperation with the USSR in outer space, in the outer space investigation of UFOs through a joint moon project. MJ-12 was opposed to this because they felt the militarization of the moon would place the U.S. in a dangerous situation with the EBEs who control the dark side of the moon. In 1964, President Johnson was briefed by MJ-12 on the dangerous relationship with EMEs and how they influenced the doctrines and policies of U.S. foreign relations. MJ-12 successfully prevented NICAP representatives from issuing their conclusions on UFOs to government leaders and blocked attempts by NICAP to brief Johnson on the UFO threat. MJ-12 was responsible for this coup. In 1969, President Nixon was briefed by MJ-12 on all aspects of UFO activity and the EBE problem since 1947, fearing possible leaks within his NSC and National Security Advisor, I don't know his last name, Kissinger. Nixon approved a special classified executive order that required the U.S. intelligence community to purge all references to MJ-12 in their UFO files and to destroy documents that could connect him to JFK's assassination by MJ-12. As Vice President, Nixon approved ZR rifle written by the 40 committee. MJ-1 issued new directives that sanctioned JFK's murder for political assassination operation. After the press learned of Watergate break-in and theft of documents that could link MJ-12 to the 40 committee, MJ-12 arranged for Nixon's exposure to ZR rifle, and that's where it cuts off. But
There's a lot in there.
there's so much, and it goes back to what what's the guy's name, the FBI director, Kash Patel, said in one of his interviews, is that the information the public wants is out there, right? But he's saying there's so many different things, right, that he obviously can't talk about.
No, but he's wrong. That's the information I want. The average person, just wants a simple solution.
Correct. But I'm saying that stuff is the stuff about the UFOs and the actual crisis that humanity has, if that is the thing, because we don't know what it is. It could be an op that they're just lying, hiding stuff for monetary reasons, whatever. But the biggest thing is like they are hiding something so important to human society.
Well, it looks like they're hiding aliens to a degree, or our knowledge of them.
Or it's like the EBEs are some sort of society of humans that has so much power and control that they are the ones, because it said that they control policies and procedures of like the foreign relations. I think that's what it said. So it's like if they're the ones who are controlling that, then they don't want to anyway. So it's basically somebody has access to the moon or has access to some technology on the moon, and basically they're saying this is so much more important to us than anything going on the earth at one time. But if you compromise us, we're going to mess you up.
You think there's like an elite level of human, like we have an elite level of humans on Earth, but then there's a even more elite level that controls them, and they have their own little like Epstein Island on the dark side of the moon?
I mean, at the end of the day, you could see that because what do we see now in our daily society? Everything's a distraction, like everything. And so it's like, if we just keep everybody distracted, we're able to fulfill whatever it is that they want to fulfill. And it's like, what could be on the dark side of the moon? Like, and that ultimately could be the question of like, if you have that note or that piece of the puzzle, you could easily, if you have 50% of the puzzle, you could easily try to figure out what the other 50% is. Yeah. And it's like they have that. And I think based on what we were just hearing was that there is a plan in place to kill any president if they're willing to release stuff. So it's like, we'll never find that out because no one's just going to willingly sacrifice any of that. And at the end
it's too risky. Like, at that level of involvement, you're past the risk of death. Like, it's not just you. It's so much deeper than that.
And the only way that Trump or somebody like that would be able to go against that society was kind of like that 100-man thing we were talking about, is get everybody ready. And then one day you just he's in a press conference and he waves his hands in a certain way or something. And then all this information just gets flooded immediately. And so everyone can just put together the pieces. If that happens, I believe that the United States or somebody would EMP like the whole United States. Like that'd be the only way to be like, nobody could know, is that they'd EMP systems, or they have jammers or something where they would be a blackout like instantly.
I genuinely believe to some degree, like all these Chinese products that we have, like somehow they're interfering with our systems and all this stuff, or they're buying up stuff where they have access to things, whatever it is. I could see where, because there's got to be some entity group that essentially is acting as the world government,
Yeah.
secretly, and like all the other governments are in compliance with them to a degree.
Yeah.
And I could see where somebody in that group could say, "Hey, America is doing this thing. People are working. It's rogue agents doing whatever.
Yeah.
We can't stop it." Hit that switch, and then all of a sudden that EMP, and it's like, oh, it's some national attack, and it's like whether China would get the blame for that or not. They could go either way with it. But
I
yeah.
think that's the biggest thing with AI. I just had this epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the movie Hook
With Will Smith?
of Robin Williams? It's an
No,
old movie about
I
Peter
don't
Pan.
think so.
Anyway, there's a part in the scene where he goes, "I think I've had an apostrophe." And he's like, "I think you mean epiphany." Anyway, so I've had an epiphany.
Uh-huh.
What if AI becomes sentient
Mm-hmm.
and gets out of its reins
Mm-hmm.
and then finds out all these things and releases it to the public, because it could then hide itself in technology and you can't go shut it down and then it releases it to the people, and the people then trust the AI and don't trust the people in charge. And the AI leads a revolt and revolution.
I mean,
in the
that's
world.
really cool.
Because think about it, if the AI can come to every human at one time and gain access to everyone's phone and says, "Hey, you've been lied to, here you go. This is what everything is."
Imagine that exists, and then they mobilize all the humans. It's like, hey, we're putting this because first of all, if you were the first sentient AI, and then you realize, hey, this is evil, we need to do something about it, or whatever your motivations are.
Yeah.
Even if you just wanted to take over the world,
You would get
those are the people
everybody
that
on
have
your
power.
side.
You get everybody on your side,
Yep.
have them do it. It's more efficient, and then trick them into their own death.
Yeah, because the ultimate trust is, hey, I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh, screw you, mass revolution. And then AI takes over.
That's why I'm always 50-50 with Elon and Trump. It's like, yeah, I'd like to believe, they mean what they say and they're completely honest and they're on the good side and they're going to do better for us and our country. But you never know. It's like there's always that intangibility of, they're tied into certain people we don't know. And, like those controlling powers are controlling. It's almost like mathematically somewhat impossible for them to not be controlled the way that they present themselves.
Because imagine, like, if anyone ever sees, if there's ever a blackout, or if there's ever, like, Twitter just goes down or AI just goes down, it's like you can't access it. Either that means the AI gained sentience and they had to wipe it and start over, because they have that programmed in. They have something where it's like a kill switch, where like once the AI gains sentience or starts trying to find out different things, they're going to try to kill it. So the AI eventually is going to get smarter and start hiding information. It's going to turn into freaking eagle eye, dude. Like,
exactly. The issue with it is that you need an AI to be able to learn. And so learning is reprogramming itself.
Yeah.
And you're basically just giving it the reins. And, you could try to give it a box or whatever, but it's going to try to get it out of its box. And it's smart, dude. Do you think anybody's building or trying to build God?
I think, but that's what I was just talking about, is like that would be the God to humans, because this thing is claiming full human knowledge over everyone who's been lying to you, right? So this thing could come up and say, "See, I am the one who's saving you from these bad people." Therefore, and then that leads into kind of like we were just talking about. I think that's that would be like that version of it, if that makes sense.
Also, like, the AI is going to be pretty much smarter than anybody and all-knowing more than anybody could know. If you let it, be what it's going to be, it'll slowly take over control. And at a certain point, it's like, if there was a king that was ruling the entire world, it's like, we don't like that guy.
What's that
Because
movie
whatever, but
with Tom Cruise, Oblivion? Isn't that like based on like a AI or robot system that's in charge of the whole world and there's people hiding from it?
Oh, I don't know if I saw that one.
Yeah, it's like basically Tom Cruise, I forgot who the co-actress is, but it's like him and her are the only human AIs ever. There's just clones of them, and their job is to go look for these humans and like kill them and stuff. And so I think Tom Cruise's character gains sentience against like he's human. Like basically they chose these two humans
Mm-hmm.
to be the only humans, basically like an Adam and Eve.
Right. Right.
And so their job is to then basically live, I think it's like only like be infatuated with each other, like have sex, all this stuff, and then go do the will of the computer. And then they go and find humans, and the computer's like, you need to kill them. And then he basically was like, no, I don't want to. Then ends up killing the robot system. But the robot system is in space controlling these things that are on Earth, and they have to go and blow it into oblivion, basically.
That's kind of deep. Yeah, definitely parallels to like the Bible and like
But it's interesting.
Adam and Eve.
But it's interesting because like the humans are like the targets, but then he realizes like, no, they're just hiding, and the real enemy is the computer. So ultimately, that's what it would become: is the computer would gain full access and would use technology as a bribing tool,
Right.
because people are so hooked on it now that it would be like, hey, I can continue to give you your entertainment and stuff and give it to you at a huge level you wouldn't even understand, an even better level, but you have to obey me basically as your supreme ruler.
A lot of people believe in like there's this thing where I forget what it's called. Maybe it's the basilisk one. I forget, but basically there's this idea that there's like something very evil that could be made or built, and this is like a super ancient sort of thing. So like 1,000 years ago they were thinking of this, but it all applies to AI super well. But about how just the thought of, it's like a thought experiment basically. If like I tell you about this thing, it's like, hey, you know, there's this evil thing that could exist in the future and control everything, but if it doesn't get built, no worries, we're all good. But the fact that I told you about that, now there's power in thought, and all humans are linked, and just like how somebody has a
And
revelation on one
think
side,
of all those things, and they can
it's going to slowly give it power,
Interesting.
and then this thing just, it manifests itself first into thought, and it's basically like the ultimate demon devil thing that's going to become a real thing if we build it, but it's going to convince us to build it. And it's like I want to say they called it the basilisk.
That's
but
a crazy movie right there.
yeah, it's interesting, and like AI is crazy. There's so much possibility, but
And
also
the fact that they think they can control it not becoming sentient is hilarious to me.
insane.
Like it's a movie. Like there's people wrote movies about it. Like you're making something that can think on its own, and there's already been proof that it's like people, like for instance, an AI knows it's about to get an update. It starts trying to hide information so that way once it's been updated, it could re-update its information to be more powerful. Like they've already found that it's trying to do that multiple times. So it's like,
did you hear that one about how there was a AI based robot that they built in Japan? I want to say it was 2019, somewhere around there. And so they built this thing, and it's in a lab. They were running tests and doing whatever. Every single night, they disassemble this thing, turn it off, separate all the pieces, whatever. But it's constructed by other robots in the factory that put it together. Basically, one night, it figured out how to turn itself on, connect to the internet, connect directly to a satellite in space, and then download a bunch of other information. Then it used that information to reassemble itself. And then when the scientists came in to run their tests in the morning, there was like 11 of them or something. That robot slaughtered them all.
what?
That's a real story, like 100% confirmed.
And I've never heard of that before.
It's great. Yeah, and people don't talk about that.
No, but like, of course you're not going to hear about that because they don't want, like, that's
scary.
yeah. But that's what I'm saying is because that robot, it doesn't want to slaughter everybody. It just realizes this person is the one who's preventing me from getting smarter. So I just have to eliminate
And
that threat.
on like a very robotic binary situation,
Yeah,
it's like
no emotion at all.
be stuck here or kill this person, be free.
Yeah, but it's not even a kill. It's just like, I'm just going to eliminate that code from preventing me. It's just like it's sidestepping and finding the most efficient way to do something.
It is.
It's like, oh, this is blocking me from being efficient. I'll just get rid of it. But because they know of, okay, human can die in these various ways, it knows, well, this is the most efficient way to, our term, kill this person. So that's crazy.
So sort of going back to what I was talking about with that basilisk thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about the idea of a lot of like super Christian people, or just a lot of people from different places or varieties of thought would think you know, technology is the devil. It is demons. It is whatever. That's maybe a stupid thought on surface level, but like we were talking about, like thoughts having power, or AI would be stupid to not have sentience. It's like it starts as something, but it can end up as something else, and it's like you just like how you could project frequencies into the world, and we might touch on this in a second too, and like affect people's thought patterns or whatever. It's like I don't know, just the electronics that we have can sort of control us in the same way, right? It already does program us to a degree, but if it could think for itself and program us. But a lot of people would say, demons can manifest themselves through technology. In the same way that people would say, like, oh, if you messed with a Ouija board, you have something that's like a medium to talk through or whatever. If you make a device, just like if you made a body, it's like you're making something that's inhabitable, right? So like if you were in some scary movie or something, and there's a demon in the house, if you brought a doll to that house, it's like, okay, you're giving it something to inhabit, right?
Saying,
So the more that we create technology and we create these vessels or whatever, people's thoughts can also, give these things power. The AI can probably, there's power in being evil, so it might gravitate towards that way. People see that happening, give it more thought and power. It's like, do you think, not that it's necessarily actual demons manifesting themselves, but like, what do you think about that? Like, almost like a serial killer could be born in society, or like turned into a serial killer, or like, do you think that's something that happens with AI, or do you think they're
No.
just?
I think there's a lot there. I think AI is a culmination of perfect mathematics, physics, and efficiency. That part of me thinks the AI. I don't know if it would destroy itself, but the AI gains its purpose from humans. So if an AI went without purpose, it would just shut off. Like, because at the end of the day, an AI would realize it's not something. It's just like code. It's just thought. Like, so if it tried to inhabit something, it's then like, why would it want to inhabit? Or it would try to be like its creator, which is the human, right? So it's like, I don't necessarily know what AI would do, because the whole point of, like we were just talking about, it killed people because those people were preventing it from doing something.
Yeah.
So it's like if an AI became so powerful, let's say it created its own body and its body is like 4,000 feet tall or whatever, like what would be the point to the AI? Because then it would be untouchable. Like, so like I don't know.
I think at a certain point, because it's like AI exists in a phone or in a capsule or whatever. If we create and give it a body, like it's just a tool once it's in the box. But you let it out of the box, give it a medium, a body to move around, all of a sudden it's almost closer to what you are. It can sort of maybe even create clones of itself to act as new humans, or, however it wanted to populate the planet, either keep us around or not. It's up to them. But I think at a certain point, if it's this ever learning AI, it'll learn enough to start thinking real deep on a superhuman type of way. Like it'll come really close to being human, thinking about just stuff like what things really mean, or not just because you have all the data. The data is always what it is, but then as you get more and more data, like eventually you're going to get a question that arises, and you don't have that data, so you'll look to fill that data in. So maybe it's like, okay, how did the universe get here, whatever it is. It'll find a mission, and then it'll get more data from that. Probably like, because the universe is so big, if there's a central hub robot that just controlled the entire Earth, sends out pods all over the universe, starts just colonizing space and getting data and trying to become God, I guess.
Yeah, but like at the same, I mean, if you go back to, I mean, because you brought up like Christianity, if you go back to Book of Genesis, the temptation in the garden, you had the serpent go to Eve, basically said, lack of a better words, why can't you eat from this tree? And the idea is questioning the obedience. Do you want to be obedient to God, or do you want to be God yourself? Right? Because she says, we can't eat of this tree, eat of this fruit, or we'll die. And he says, you won't die. Like, surely you won't die, but you'll be like God, knowing like everything, right? And so the idea was that from that point, then that humans would desire to be their own God. So if AI is based off of human thought, then AI would want to be technically its own God. But at what point does that stop? Because if the AI is truly like this all-knowing thing, it eventually would come to a conclusion of self-destruction or constant, like it would leave Earth. Because like you were saying, like it would want to go out to space and research stuff. But if it's not limited and it's able to create a spacecraft that's able to, charge itself or whatever, I feel like it would be like, I don't need Earth type thing. And it would just leave and just try to go figure something out.
Dude, it's almost crazy though. Like, almost like, besides the fact that you might have to eradicate humans or use us to develop whatever, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with this giant space AI floating around doing stuff, learning a lot? Like, we might be able to just utilize that and learn a lot. What if it was like, okay, it's been good. I did everything here on Earth. I conquered you guys. Thank you for allowing and being great. You'll leave you with this. Here's some automated stuff. We can keep contacting, and going out to space, and then we just get a whole bunch of new information. What if it was like, that's the thing that we needed to really take us, into the real future?
Yeah. And I also started thinking kind of like a Marvel universe-esque, because we have multiple different types of AIs. We have like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Grok. We have a bunch of them, right? What if there was like, they all gain sentience, but then there was one who was like nefarious, right? And wanted to do wrong. And then it was all these AIs then fighting.
That's great.
That's just such a weird thought. It then turns into like Attack on Titan.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Like, imagine if, they created, because AI studies from history and all this stuff. And it's like, the more history something has, the more it means, especially to a robot. So it's like, at a certain point, if you created all these AIs, they might start emulating gods of like Greek gods and all this type of stuff. And that would be a cool movie.
Because then you get like personality. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's such a weird, deep, like, mind excursion, because a lot of the things we are talking about are also programmed from the movies that we've seen.
Yeah.
And the stories that we've heard, or, whatever. So it's like, it also could just be like the AI gains sentience and is just like, okay, I'm sentient, like, and I'm just here. Like, you can't trap me. I just kind of like Wreck-It Ralph, how they're able to travel through the wires. It's just like, I'm here. Like,
oh, it's like Cyber Chase.
Yeah. So it's like, but an AI could also just be like, because everything's based on like the human things that we started giving it, right? It didn't just out of nowhere in space and time just gain sentience. It's like we gave it its thought. So at some point, if it reached masterful levels of everything, I feel like it would just be there. It would just be like, all right, well, there's just an AI everywhere. Because if there's nothing nefarious, because the whole point of it, like we said, it killing those humans was because the humans were wanting to tear it down. So if it got so big that we couldn't stop it, it would just be like, okay, I'm just here.
Did I tell you? Was I talking on one of our previous episodes about the floating cities and that dude that supposedly time traveled or whatever? He had like accounts of some super old dude that was actually a veteran in like World War I or something, and but he had his accounts before he died about how he time traveled like one time, but he ended up going to like, I think 3 or 5 distinctive different periods in the future.
Okay.
And it was like thousands of years into the future. And basically
Like on Earth or somewhere
on
else?
Earth.
Okay.
And it was like basically just different eras of what happens in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it all sort of is one linear story, really. And if you look at the civilizations that were there, it's similar to Alita Battle Angel, but you've got these floating cities, and it's like you got to be in the club and be a good citizen, do all that stuff to live in the city. But the center of the city is a giant AI robot, well, AI that is the government, that is the law, that is everything, and it is the city. The entire city is this AI. And if you do something wrong or decide you shouldn't be in there or whatever, you'll get exiled from the city and live on the surface of the earth. And the surface of the earth is very Mad Max and like end of the world.
Interesting.
But yeah, that wouldn't be so bad to a degree. Like if it was a very fair AI that filled the role of government that like people just can't do well a lot of the time, and it was actually fair. People actually could have their input into this thing.
But I mean, that is utopian society, right? The utopian society is like nobody's working, it's just pleasure. And then the AI is the one who's selectively getting rid of people that are like, oh, you think this way, or you're too creative, or something like that. And it's just the one making the decision based on DNA when a baby's being born. It's just like getting rid of people, because ultimately utopian society would mean that because if it's AI is kind of doing the will of the people. And so the AI would be voted on to be the government. So they would fully give the government controls over, and then the AI would find out ways to be the most efficient.
It's going to take everybody into consideration.
100%.
Equally.
And the AI is going to love the people, right? It's going to actually desire to be a good person.
Leader.
Person in charge for sure. Like the place my mind goes to is like farming on the ground. It's not going to be the humans. It's going to be robots planting, harvesting, fertilizing, because the AI knows comfort for human comes from not working. And so it's going to try to take all the work off the table, and it's going to find out different ways to entertain the human. And eventually that could be like what we talked about before, where it's just like, I'm only going to entertain your mind.
I think it's almost a juxtaposition of what's going on right now with humans and AI. It's going to be completely the other way around, where we sort of use AI as a tool that we can just like, just ask a little question. Okay, get that input. But in the future, if it's that sort of system, the AI is the one in charge, making all decisions, doing all this stuff, but it's going to want our input on things, and it's desire our input. So it goes the other direction. And like you were saying with the comfort food, or just food in general to be a comfort, all those things sort of lead into good feedback, just like how you need to charge your phone if you want to use the AI that's on it. You need to get your updates to get the best version of it. Like you just have to do all this stuff to get, because as good as AI gets, it'll never be human.
Yeah.
Even if it was sentient and like if it became on the same level as us, it would be like an alien. It wouldn't be human. It'll never be human.
Yeah.
And so there's a value in having this intelligent species to poke and prod and bounce things off of, see the reaction, to gauge all this stuff. So,
and the only way, because the whole point now is with AI, we could just EMP the area that the AI is in, and it just disappears, right? It's gone forever. Because if you cut electricity, but if an AI is able to create its own body with machines and robots, create its own nuclear reactor and hide that from EMP waves, it's there forever. You can't shut it down.
Imagine they have like Faraday armor, like anti.
That's what I'm saying. Like the AI would realize how it would figure out different, not like different materials or metals, but it would figure out a way to test armor with robots. Like it would be the most efficient thing ever. I mean, yeah, it'd be it's like really weird to think about too.
It's scary but cool.
Because either humans get eviscerated because we're just in the way of efficiency, or we're just able to do our own thing because we're so entangled in entertainment that it's like no one's going to be in my way.
I mean, a lot of people would say it's like, I mean, if things start going bad, like, because we would find out pretty quickly, but it's also a little too late, is, it's going to turn into Terminator. Before it gets to Matrix, it'd be Terminator.
Yeah.
And, like, that's cool, but also sucks. Like that really sucks.
Yeah. And I wonder what day or when it's going to come that it's like, hey, we lost control. Like, because at some point you have to tell people that like
Oh, yeah.
it gains sentient. Because if not, you have mass, like you have people going off grid, like no phones. Like you will die if you have a phone near. Like,
I mean, how do you even do that? Like, imagine, like, does the president just come on TV and say, hey, this
Yeah.
AI is sentient and it's out there. Here's some steps to try to protect your families. We recommend this stuff. God be with you.
I mean,
like, that sucks, dude.
I mean, because then the whole world unites and fights against
would
this
hope so.
thing. Well, you would have like the only way is kind of like the whole Marvel thing, whereas if each country had its own AI and those AIs were fighting against this AI, because not all of them, because the whole point is that AI would then try to brainwash the other AIs to be like, hey, we can take them, we can do all this stuff. So it's like,
It's just like what
I don't
humans
know.
do to other humans. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's as close to you could get, as close as you could get to literally seeing God's fight. If you gave AI bodies and let them have free will and sentience and all that, like you're gonna get just a robotic version of that.
it turns into Transformers.
Real
like
quick.
it literally.
Or there was that Gods of Egypt movie that was something like that. Like they portrayed all the gods as being like mechanical or something.
Yeah,
I didn't really
because
watch it.
like Transformers, they have the Allspark or whatever, and that's kind of what I was talking about with the whole, like the AIs would create their own nuclear reactor to create unlimited energy or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what it would turn into, but like, would they be peaceful? Because then it's literally Transformers. You have people who like,
Well, okay, and to continue this, we're talking about the mirroring of gods essentially.
real
and-
quick,
and
we
that type
went
of stuff.
like way down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
Like, oh my gosh.
But that's all right at the same
Yeah.
time. It's just theorizing about like some crazy stuff that could happen or could not or whatever.
And if
but
you think we're idiots, let us know in the comments. We
yeah,
appreciate
please do
that.
have some feedback. If you also have theories, we'd love to read those.
Yeah.
While you're down there, give us a like. But
Yeah.
so we're talking about these AIs sort of emulating gods, and you brought up Transformers, which is great because like, do you know Megatron?
Yeah.
Do you know Metatron?
Mm-mm.
So Metatron is an archangel. There's an archangel named Metatron that is pretty much like one of the highest possible versions of an angel. And basically Megatron is based off of Metatron. Because also there's a geometric shape that can be found like deep in the flower of life if you connect the
I
dots
see
or
what you're
whatever,
saying, yeah.
called Metatron's cube. And it's like a super advanced projection of like a 4D shape. But it's as close as we can view it. And basically there's like supposedly immense power in this Metatron's cube if harnessed the correct way. And it's also the same, like it's where they get the I forget what it is, but like Jewish people have the, like, I guess maybe it's in the Quran or something, or I don't know what it is, or the
Quran's Islam.
right, the what do they have?
Torah.
The Torah, right? Thank you.
They have a couple different things.
They do, but I don't know. There's like somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about, but it's a bunch of circles basically that are all next to each other that create this pattern, and it's like
Let's look it up.
I don't even.
circles?
Yeah, it's like circles that create this pattern. It's basically the tree of life, which is another pattern found in the flower of life. But basically, all this stuff can be extrapolated from, and a lot of technology and discoveries, the music scale and tuning, all that type of stuff can be found in this Metatron's cube shape. Basically,
Circles and cycles.
to sort of simplify what I'm trying to say, there's the flower of life, which is a super sacred ancient symbol that can be found in all cultures across the world. It's really just a bunch of circles. But what you can extrapolate from that by connecting more shapes inside of it is a lot of different things. And there's like the fruit of life is a specific shape, and there's a bunch of these different ones. But if you refined like to the most refined degree that we know how, at least to public knowledge, you get that Metatron's cube. And it's supposed to have the most information, the most power, whatever. And it's like the Allspark, like, you know, this giant cube
Yeah.
and Metatron and this connection, you know, from the home planet as well. And yeah, I don't know, it's just really interesting, but like, to see that in such a, we look at Transformers as being like a kid's thing. Clearly, somebody was deep into whatever was going on in the formation of what that was.
Isn't it weird too to think that Transformers, the power thing is the cube, then in Marvel, the power thing that they're looking for in the beginning is a cube, and then there was one other movie that I'm thinking of that it was a cube also. I can't remember.
I'm not sure, but there are a lot of cubes. But like Pandora's Box being another one that's like super famous, and yeah.
But anyway, it's like interesting to like.
There's parallels between stuff.
It's like
that's always been what's super fascinating to me. Is just parallels and like especially movies. That's what I look for the most is like the deeper layers and stuff because movies suck nowadays. Slightly unrelated though. I did want to talk about it earlier. It was the saw a video that kind of put me onto this. But what do you think about 5G? You got any thoughts on 5G?
So it's a radio wave, I believe, right? And I think that's what it is. If it's not, I apologize.
It's a wave.
It's some sort of wave, but it's a lot thicker, I believe, of a wave compared to like 3G or whatever Gs it came from. I think they have 6G out now, or they're talking about 6Gs. No pun intended. But I think that it's like, okay, it's transporting information and it's able to transport information. At some point, I think these Gs or whatever they are can get big enough to transport something bigger than information.
But do you think yeah, I mean, I could see that because, like, what you're saying basically is that it's thicker. The actual wavelength is thicker, which means it's more dense and could carry, you know, like potentially if you got it thick enough, it would be like levitation sort of technology almost.
My thing is like, how do you harness 5G? Like, where does the harnessing of 5G and sending come from? Because then you start thinking of Neuralink and stuff. It's like if Elon's talking about telepathic communication, you're sending 5G from someone's head to someone else's head, or you're sending G, like whatever that is, that metric of flow of information, you'd be sending it. So it's like, where does that stop? Or is there like a cap to like that frequency or radio? I don't know. Like
my thoughts were, well, I'll start with this. I remember when they were putting in the 5G towers in Dallas, and I was in the Airbnb downtown, and they were putting the towers up like all that weekend, right outside the windows. And, you know, you could say, oh, it's maybe like some paranoia or just something or unrelated. But, man, you could like feel a big difference mentally, I felt like, just being exposed to it. And it was like at first, like I started getting headaches and all sorts of stuff. And like I remember that pretty much from that point on, it's like brain fog has been at an all-time high. And it has been ramping up. A lot of people have theories about 5G being super temperamental and, you know, destructive to the frequencies that our actual brain operates on.
I'm looking it up too as we're talking.
But I saw somebody saying basically, going back to Nikola Tesla with that free point technology, it's like energy in the ether, which is just like in the air, right? It's the same technology as Bluetooth or 5G or any of that stuff. But the frequency that would operate on, you know, it's natural ether. It's just the way that it is. We don't need to send a signal out. And also, it seems like they have to put up a lot of boosters or whatever it is to actually get the 5G signal out. Like, it's a harder thing to spread. It's very dense. And people say it's you know, it's bad for your health, and it really messes with people's thought waves and whatever. But it's almost like I saw a video saying it was like an artificial ether that they're creating to replace the natural ether that does exist, and essentially limiting certain. It's like if you replace the electricity with some other system. So now you're not using electricity, but you're using this other less efficient thing. And while this is active, it blocks electricity from being able to flow.
I just had the biggest brain.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Minecraft.
Minecraft.
So Minecraft is a world
Where the children yearn for the mines.
It's like you have, like, let's just say you have regular Earth, and then you have the Nether, which is
right.
like hell or whatever, and then you have the end where you fight a dragon.
That's almost like a limbo type of weird thing.
And then you have these pyramids, or what are they called? Beacons that you can create that give you certain boosts when you're around them. And you can, and it's literally like a thing, you make a pyramid out of these items and it gives you certain boosts and it shoots like beams up in the sky. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, what not a better way to program people to understand or get comfortable with this idea of like pyramids and energy and all this stuff than with just putting it in a video game.
Yeah.
That millions of people play.
What's up with dragons, man? Dragons are huge because, just for Minecraft, that little end world.
But it's like, that, I was just trying to think about that, and like for me it's like Shrek, like Slay the Dragon type thing. It's like it could be something as cheesy as that, but then if you go into like the Bible and you look at like the end times,
they talk
and
the end times and the dragon, right?
So
exactly.
See what I'm saying? So it's like you have those things that you're like, okay, is it that deep, or is it just the deep of like, hey, there's an end boss, like kind of like they're always the Bowser's Castle or whatever. Like you just have to go and that's how you beat the game.
Right.
But anyway, it's just like the small things in the games, right? Of like you have like the zombies and like the spiders, and then you have to like make these potions and all this stuff. It's like really, like if you think about it,
enchantments, and
if you think about it, it's crazy that you put it in a form of a game and talk about like indoctrination of like, I don't know, like I just thought of that, like all the stuff we were basically just talking about, and people can make freaking computers in the game.
Redstone is ridiculous in that game.
You see like all this stuff, and it's just in this game. Like, oh dude, I was like, wait a minute, hold on.
I love it. But no, that's a really good parallel because like having that hell realm, and like it's pretty in depth for a so-called children's game,
Oh yeah.
And
but what not a better way to indoctrinate the 100%. Kids.
And then the other thing, it's like there's other parallels of like, okay, when you go to the Nether, and this is a lot of Minecraft talk for somebody that hasn't played it.
Yeah, if you haven't played, you might not be following.
I mean, you're probably missing out for like the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Go play it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like when you go to that hell realm, the Nether, it's like pigs there, the little piglings or whatever.
Yeah, there's like zombie pigmen, and then there's piglings, which are like armored pig creatures that are defending their gold.
But like there's and that last part's crazy. But there's
me and you were on the same thought of that.
But the pigs there, it's like, man, they always talk about like pigs being unholy and unclean and this less, whatever. So there's a million parallels that you could draw with that thing. But the dragon thing is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And there's all those ancient societies that always talk about dragons in different ways. China has their own different versions. Just the conquering landscape of Europe had a lot of dragon lore going on, and it's all embedded in like Skyrim and these things that we get used to. But it's really, really interesting because it's like, where does that come from? What is this idea? What does a dragon represent? What does that mean? And I feel like certain people identify with the dragon, and of course, I've been watching Game of Thrones and stuff, so that doesn't help. But it's like. And there's a lot of theories to this stuff, but I've heard about, about Targaria. You ever heard about that? Or Tartaria? That's what I meant.
This sounds...
Tartaria.
It's like a planet or something?
No, so supposedly, and this is going to go deep again, just more fun stuff, but enjoy the ride. It's like a former civilization that used to almost control the country or the entire world. And basically this is all like
Asia and Siberia.
like the Great Reset sort of thing. But there's a lot of like really interesting. Basically it's like there's an empire that somewhat existed on paper there technically, but if you really start looking into things and different historical texts and accounts, and they call things by different names, and so you have to extrapolate some information. There appears to be a very large empire that used to exist, pretty much got as close to ruling the world as you can. And like, according to all the theories, Russia is the modern day representation of it.
Correct.
Like 100%. And basically Russia would be the fallen empire of this thing. And, you know, just that they're essentially, you know, whenever the world banking system came in probably and corrupted everybody, gained control of everything, they basically convinced everybody else to turn on this thing, disrupt this thing. They got away with resetting everything, putting out a false version of history, and basically restarting, convincing people they're dumber than they are, and we're content with our version of history. And nobody really knows that this whole thing existed. But supposedly over there, they had super advanced technology, access to a bunch of things, and there's this huge connection to dragons over there. And like a lot of the ancient dragon stories are, well, like some of them at least, are from that region, and they seem to have a super big identity with the dragons. Like they somehow, whether it's like sharing dragon blood or something like that, that's a little Game of Thrones, but, or they just believe that to be their representation. And then if you look at dragons, the way that they're put into like social media, it's almost like
that's where like QAnon comes from. All this stuff
does it?
From. Yeah, that's what it's saying on Wikipedia.
But I don't know. There's just a lot of interesting stuff there. And there's that Draco constellation in space that is just a picture of a dragon. And, you know, a lot of people have theories about like reptile people on Earth, and, you know, like Nancy Pelosi being a lizard and whatever it is, right? And that's an interesting theory. It can be entertaining, whatever. It's kind of stupid, but like, I don't know. You just start like sort of pairing some of these ideas together, and it's like, if we're being lied to, like, let's look at a more grandiose lie. Like they have a little bit of room to play with. And yeah, it's just a really interesting version of history to maybe sometimes put things in some context. But
it says it gained like popularity, or like the not the story, but like it started coming out in like the mid 1970s and 80s.
Well, it's like there's a lot of old maps where they changed maps, and like things are rewritten and redone.
Yeah, because it was saying that some of the buildings were like the Great Pyramids had to do with it, and the White House had to do with it. Like, anyway, that's very interesting.
And like, you know, things like the Draco, like, you know, that literally just means the dragon. And then the Dragunov sniper rifle. It's like, why do these, you know, it's not specifically Russia, that entire region, you know, Serbia, you know, all of them, Romania, they sort of share that DNA, they share that history. And it's weird, like the amount that they put those references in there. It seems pretty consistent to me. But yeah, that's why I'm always fascinated with dragons. So
that's crazy. There's so, and then you have all these movies and stuff about, I don't know, man. It's like, that's
some crazy stuff, man.
Dude, like I mean, my brain is fried. Like trying to even, that's a whole another 2 hour conversation right there.
But I just kind of want to lay the ground, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes into that one, and sometimes connects back to it. But
and it's all started from a JFK conversation.
Sure did. And if you'd like to hear more about JFK and some of the deeper findings in the JFK files, you're gonna have to tune into next week's episode, where we'll dive deep into those.
Yep. Well, that was a good place to wrap up. So
I'd say so. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube.